How many times have you been trying to sit down and figure out what you're going to post on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, and you've said to yourself, I just don't understand. Nothing I do is working. Then I would follow that question by asking, after you feel that way, how many times do you actually go take a look at your analytics? And when I say take a look, I don't mean just take a look, a glance over. I mean really looking through your analytics with a pen and paper and diving into it in a way that is with a strategic lens. The answer is probably not too many. So today I want to share with you some really great ways that you can analyze all of the data that you have at your fingertips so that you can make smarter decisions when it comes to planning out the content that you're going to create. I'm Kristen Buscan. I've been a full-time creator for over 3 years, and I've brought in over $350,000 from sponsored posts and content creation collaborations with brands so far. Soulcial Scoop is the podcast where we teach you, the entrepreneurial creator, to turn your online influence and creativity into a profitable, self-sustaining business. So this episode is for the creators who want the content that they create to hit, right? To hit with their audience, do what we want it to do. I know so many of us, we're working so hard on our content, and there's truly like no worse feeling than you post something that you're really excited about and it absolutely bombs. I know this is something like I've felt a lot recently because I've been trying to put so much more effort into what I'm creating. And so it especially hurts like deep in my soul when I'm putting so much of this effort into production and scripting and all of that and editing, and then I literally am like, oh, cool, 2,000 views, got it. I thought this was gonna go viral. It's sometimes very frustrating, right? So I really want to stress the point that we have so much data on all of the platforms. I'm going to be primarily talking about Instagram today. We have so much data on all of the platforms for us to be able to take a look at and really try and understand what's working and what's not. And so we're going to do that. We're going to hopefully make a pretty foolproof plan for you so that you can share content that is going to perform the way that you want it to perform, considering all of the work, time, energy, money that you're putting into it. So let's first talk about the metrics that really matter the most for creators. I think one of the most obvious ones is reach, right? We want to see how many people did this video reach, and then also views of the people that it reached. How many times was it actually viewed, right? Our views very often are going to be higher than our reach because that is more of the kind of impressions, right? Like if one person watches your video multiple times, the reach might be one from that one person, but the views might be 2, 3, 4, depending on how many times that they watched it. So when you are in Instagram and you're going through your analytics, you have the option to sort by reach and sort by views. So you can kind of see what the difference is and see like, are people watching this video multiple times? We know that happens very often with shorter videos, right? But also how many people is this video actually reaching? I think those are two very important ones. The other is engagement rate. We know that's another KPI that is very important, especially when you're working with brands or wanting to work with brands. How many people, or what percentage of people, I should say, are actually interacting with the content in comparison to how many people follow you. Now, there's technically two ways to calculate engagement rate. You can either calculate engagement rate by the total number of people who follow you, or you can calculate it by the number of people who viewed the piece of content. For example, if you had 1,000 people view your content, you got 250 different like engagements, 25% would be your engagement rate. That seems like a much more fair way to calculate it, right? Because we're like, well, if people didn't see this, how can we count them towards engaging with it? Like they didn't even see it. But the sad truth and the sad situation of it is that that is really never how any of the calculators are going to calculate it. It's very often not how brands are calculating it. The number that they're using for the big total is often the amount of followers you have. So then if you have 100,000 followers and you get 250 likes on it, that's going to be a much, 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 much smaller percentage than 1,000 views, right? So it stinks because it's kind of like an unfair way of looking at it. But unfortunately, that's the way that a lot of brands are looking at it, mostly because they don't really have the reach information necessarily readily available to them. So when you're calculating your engagement rate, very often you're going to use your full follower count number. And transparently, that percentage is probably going to be very low. One of the questions that I get the most often is just like, what is my engagement rate supposed to be? If you are in the nano category, you're like 0 to 10,000 followers, your percentage is expected to be a lot higher than the percentage of people who maybe are micro or macro or mid-tier creators. Those numbers are probably going to be a lot lower. And the reason for that is people in that nano category, 0 to 10K, have a much smaller audience to manage, right? Like realistically, you are more able in that category to have conversations with everyone versus someone that has 5 million followers. Like there's no way they're going to ever have conversations with all 5 million of those people. So we, as we grow, are very likely going to see our engagement rate actually start to go down or kind of consistently stay the same in level. Now, that's normal. I think it's weird for us because when we think about numbers and like we're growing, it's going up, you would also think that engagement rate percentage is going to go up. If it does, I think that's a really, really great thing to note when you're having conversations with brands or, sharing your media kit, things like that. But for the most part, that's not how it goes. That's not the realistic vision you should see as you grow, right? Now, what is kind of industry standard? So when you go and calculate your engagement rate, you can do this on like so many different websites. Honestly, they're all going to be a little bit different. Typically, when I'm calculating engagement rate on those sites, I will literally go to 3 different websites, calculate on all 3 of them, and just see like what the middle is, what the average is. And so that's an option. Or you can manually calculate it, but transparently, that is not going to be worth your time. Just use a calculator. Now, once you get that percentage, what is normal is going to be, again, very different for different follower count buckets. According to a lot of data that we've seen in the last year, 2% is what's considered industry standard for someone who's in the micro, mid tier, or macro category. Micro might even be a little bit higher sometimes. Some brands might be expecting more like 3 or 4%. If you are in the nano category, more like 5 to 7%, or maybe even higher, is what a brand would expect. So you guys have a lot of expectations on you with engagement rate, which can be a little frustrating. But again, you have just more of an opportunity to actually connect with all the people who are in your audience. So that's that on engagement rates. Now, conversions is another really, really important KPI when it comes to partnerships specifically, or reaching out to brands, presenting yourself for opportunities. Now, conversions are going to be calculated in so many different ways. The other kind of frustrating thing is that sometimes you cannot track conversions. So, a good way of tracking conversions would be like link clicks on stories. While it's not 100% accurate because you don't know how many people maybe checked out wherever you sent them, you do know how many people you are converting from one platform to like an e-commerce website. So I think that's a really good way of tracking. And very often you will hear brands ask you for link click kind of stats to see how many people you're actually getting to click on things. So that would actually be a stat that, as you are starting to reach out to brands, I would definitely try and post some stories that you know are going to just like send a bunch of people to clicking on links, so that you can start to bump up those stats for when a brand asks you for a screenshot. You're like, sick, I got you. Like, I'm already confident in these because I've been working on it. So in this kind of like maybe pre-pitching or pre-outreach process, I do think it would be really smart for that to be something that you play around with and maybe put some time and energy into. Now, outside of link clicks, you can also track conversions by trackable links. So very often when we work with a brand on a partnership, they're going to give us a trackable link that will essentially have like customization in the link so that they can track on the back end how many people are actually clicking into that link and going wherever you're sending them. Very often, only the brand has access to the results here, which again is a little frustrating. However, as the partner in this relationship, you have absolute right to ask them, "Hey, can you share some of the data on the conversions? I'd love to hear how many people that I sent to the website. Like if you could send me screenshots, that would be great." And one of the things that I love about that is then you can actually use that data for case studies to use in the future. So you could say to a brand in 2 months, "Hey, 2 months ago, I worked with this brand. I had a trackable link, and this is how many people I sent to the website." The other way that they might track it as a brand in a partnership is through discount codes, right? So even for Social Suite, we have an affiliate program where everyone has basically like a trackable link. I can see how many people are doing it. Brands also will very often use like a code for this, Kristen 10. And then we can see like a big list in the back end of like, this is how many people use this code, or this is how many people click this link. So I would very, very strongly recommend that you reach out to brands that you work with for this data. It's not like a rude thing to ask by any means. I think it's incredibly helpful data for you to have as you go to pitch to other brands or create case studies for other brands in the future. Now, outside of those different KPIs, I think it's also really important for you to be able to look at all of the data you're getting in the apps and kind of use that to make content decisions in the future. So, typically, what my process looks like for that, once a month, I try and do it once a month. I sound really like put together saying I do it once a month. I try to, okay? Once a month, I try to sit down, and what I'll do is look at the last 90 days of insights on Instagram. So when you go to your insights, you can choose, 7 days, 30 days, 120 days, like the entire year. Like you can choose a bunch of different things. I really like to choose the last 90 days because I feel like 30, maybe I haven't posted enough variety of content to be able to like really make an educated decision. Anything more than 90 days, I feel like is too far past, right? Like what worked for me a year ago may be very different from what's working for me now. So I like 90 days. I think it's a very nice middle of the road time duration. So I'll go to the last 90 days, and the first thing I'll do is sort by reach. So I like to be able to see how many people saw this content in order of most to least. And typically, what I'll do is take a screenshot of the top like 9 posts. Usually you can kind of see like 9 very clearly in that box. I'll take a screenshot of the top 9 posts and I will literally like take notes. I usually use like Canva for this. You could also use like your iPad or just literally write it on a piece of paper, print this out, and I make notes. Like I'll draw an arrow from one of the photos over to the side and I'll be like, okay, here's everything about this post. Like it was a trending sound. It was this many seconds. It was about this. My dog was in it. I was in this location. Like I'll literally write all of these things down. And then I will do that for all of those 9 posts. And what's really cool about that is I can basically look at all of the data, be like, wow, let me circle the similarities here. These were all 10-second videos and they're like in my top 3 performing. Okay, so like mental note, 10 seconds is a really good time for me. Maybe my dog is in all of the videos, my top 9. That is immediately like big green flag waving in my face. Make sure the dog is in the content, right? Like going forward, get the dog in the content. So I will go through and literally like try and figure out similarities for all of these things. I think that's such a good way to do it. Um, I, for all of this, will use literally just the Instagram data. There are paid tools like, social media platforms like Later or Social Blade, so many different ones, but transparently, I don't think it's necessary for you to do that. I think what you get from Instagram itself is very much robust enough that that's really all you would need. Now, I typically will then take that data, and when I'm planning out the calendar for the month, I'm saying, okay, like here's my concept, but how can I like again make it into like a shorter video, 10 seconds, because I can see that that's maybe what works for me. Or how can I add my dog into this content, or whatever these things that I'm seeing in common are. I will take my ideas and concepts based on what people like are asking me or ideas that I have in my head, and then I will, for formatting, try and see how much of the similarities between my top posts that I can actually incorporate into these new ideas for the upcoming month. Now, we have another really great tool on Instagram as of recently that I think is a really, really, really nice way to also play with data, and that is trial reels. Now, I'll be honest, when I first tried it, I literally just had 0 views on my video, but it was like the day after it came out. And I was like, yeah, I'm done here. I'm not gonna like post on this stupid thing if I am just gonna get 0 views on this video. What's the point? I had a few people in Social Suite who were using this very actively and sharing their results. And I was like, wow, okay, like you guys have inspired me to do this again. And so I started posting there again. And it's actually been a really cool way to see like the same concept, but multiple different ways, how one might perform better than the other. For example, we actually had one of our creators in Social Suite share screenshots with us of 3 different trial reels that she shared. It was the same concept, but she did it 3 different ways. And it was like one of them had like a ton more saves than the other. One had like no comments, but a ton of reach. One had like mediocre views and mediocre comments, but like across the board it was like more even. And so we as a group were kind of trying to analyze, ooh, like which one should she officially post, because these insights are all like good in their own kind of ways. So it's been really cool to be able to see like the difference between different formats, or like even just changing things like fonts or colors, and seeing how big of a difference all of those make. But the cool thing about the trial reels is that she technically put 3 different videos out there into the universe, and into reels that she actually posted. Like it looked to people on Instagram like this was just a regular post, which again I think is very cool, because then she can just gain more followers from it, gain more views and all of that. So try the trial reels feature if you haven't already. I think it's a cool way to again test the same concept multiple ways. I think it would also be super cool if you were to join us in Social Suite and be able to see what other creators are kind of experimenting with. It was very eye-opening even for me, as the leader of this group, to be able to see kind of what other creators are doing and what is and is not working for them. So that was very cool, and I think that would be very, very helpful. Now, one last thing I want to share with you, and this is kind of something to take with a grain of salt. Now, I very often will take a look at my like quote unquote competitors, and I say quote unquote because like we're all friends. I take a look at my competitors on Instagram, and I'm often looking to see what's working for them as well. I'm doing the same process of maybe looking at like video length, concept. Are they, sitting in their car talking, or are they like doing a voiceover? Like, what is working for the people who are in my space as well? Because very often what that will do is actually give me some like really fun ideas to experiment with, and it just kind of opens up the doors for me to try new things and see if there's something that I'm missing that my audience would absolutely love, but maybe I just haven't thought to try it yet. So I will do that very often where I'll look at my kind of like closest competitors, see what's working for them. And then also, I really like to do this specifically on TikTok. If you go into the search bar and search your topic, you can sort by the videos that are getting the highest views, the highest engagement. And that is also another really, really great way to see what's working in your industry. So I do love doing that, and that will be something that I'll be very sad to lose if TikTok is banned, because obviously on Instagram we can search a topic, but we cannot filter by any sort of stats to see like what's actually working and what's not. There are things I will definitely miss about TikTok. There are things that I will not miss, but I overall I just really hope it doesn't get banned. You know, I don't want any of us to lose that. There are some people who are just making their entire career off it. And not to get on a tangent, but I did watch a video last night that was like one of the things that will happen with a TikTok ban is more animals will die in shelters because like we don't have TikTok to be able to share them. And I was like, why do you gotta go ruining my day like that? It's sad but true, right? I hate that for us. So if you're listening, TikTok people, please keep working to not get the app banned. Okay, off my TED talk about TikTok. Anyway, key takeaways. Take a look at your analytics often, print that shit out, and literally analyze it. You are a strategist. You are a content strategist for your own content, for your own page, your own audience. You need to know what the data is saying to you and potentially screaming in your face. Okay. And you need to take that into consideration as you move forward. Also, don't be afraid to look at competitors or to try the trial reels and see what you have that could be potentially right in front of you that you can experiment with even more to hopefully find something that really will stick with your audience and do all of the things that you want your content to do on social media. If you guys have any questions or need anything, my DMs are always open. I will see you next week. Bye.